All right, here we go. NFL Week 10 game previews. I'm going to try to keep this intro short because time's ticking. I'm recording this on Friday morning, much later than I wanted to. Almost wasn't even going to do it this week because I've just been so busy with adding basketball to the schedule. But I made a goal before the season started to do game breakdowns every week of the season. I'm not going to fail here at Week 10. I may still fail, but it's not going to be this week. No. I usually have like 6 or 7 pages worth of notes while doing these previews. I have like 1.5, so bear with me here. This won't be my best work. All right, bye weeks this week. We got Cincy, Dallas, KC, and Tennessee. Dallas kind of gets shortchanged on their bye week, having a Monday Night Football game, so they lose a day. Not really a major big deal, but last week, kind of a kill shot for Survivor contest with the two biggest favorites losing outright, Packers and Lions. This season's been relatively easy to survive and advance. But if you're still alive, I'm not. I mean, congratulations. It means you've dodged some bullets making it a Week 10. Hopefully everyone saw my Thursday Night Football game preview. Got the win there with the Raiders as quadruple Ds. Spoiler alert, we may have another double-digit divisional dog this week. Let's get into it. Sunday, early game. Falcons, Colts in Berlin. These overseas games have, we've seen some weird results historically. I think I really need to like a side or total to have a play on one of these games. Can't really downgrade the Colts after last week. 6 turnovers aside, they did move the ball, but it was their first real glimpse of seeing this team outdoors in weather on grass. Now, this game in Berlin will be that, but much worse. And I think this Colts team is more built for indoor controlled environments. Little market manipulation on this line on the opener. They pump faked Atlanta, then came back with the Colts. I actually did a market analysis lesson on this inside the Discord. It's free to join the Discord if you want to check out that particular lesson, but I do have a paid membership, which gives you access to everything I offer. Not sure I can trust the Falcons here. Why aren't you pounding the rock with Bijan? Last week on the road, your young QB's banged up, and you give Bijan 12 carries? I get, the Patriots have a really good run defense, but play to your strengths, or even somewhat. Colts lose DeForest Buckner. That injury's big up front when you consider they're already pretty thin. Tyquan Lewis also looking like a no-go on the edge this week for the Colts. I think the Falcons will be able to run the ball here. This will be by far the best run game the Colts defense has seen all season by a lot. But will Falcons actually run the ball? Who knows? Sauce Gardner versus Drake London should be a good matchup. Wonder how much Sauce can kind of learn in a couple days, and with all this traveling. Drake London's coming off a huge game. Not sure what direction I'd go in this one. Falcons defense really struggled against heavy personnel, which, it's 12, 13 formations, both versus the pass, but also the run concepts too, that the Colts like to use out of 12 personnel, like man duo or power, or basically like any gap schemed runs that emphasize on double teams on the defensive line. Falcons have shown a real inability to stop those, like the 49ers and Buffalo game. And I think after such a high variance game like the Colts just had with 6 turnovers, we see Steichen kind of go back to the basics, run heavy, really use JT, and kind of see if the Falcons can stop them. All right, moving right along here, let's go down to the Browns-Jets. So the under 38 in this game was the first bet I made this week, and early weather reports looked worse than what it shows now. I liked the under in this game if it was played in perfect conditions, but the weather was what made me fire in early because I didn't want the number dropping. On the side, this was actually Jets -2 or -1.5 until the trade. The Jets let go their best defensive back, Sauce Gardner, best defensive lineman, Quinnen Williams. This was a bottom 5 pass defense with those guys on the team, so not surprised Cleveland's now moved to favorites. But I think the trades kind of say a lot more about the Jet current mind state than anything. This season seems like a wash for them. They're building for the future, and think we could see some of the younger backups maybe get more time. Another sign of this is the benching of linebacker Quincy Williams. He's a healthy scratch. He's not going to start, but he'll play. And I mean, the Jets on paper, the defense looks absolutely horrendous now. But I actually don't think it's going to be exposed this week against the Browns. The Browns' offense is dead last in EPA per drop back and success rate. Dylan Gabriel just stinks. More importantly, the Jets play a ton of single high man coverage. Cleveland's offense has nobody that can beat man, no wide receivers that can separate. Browns really just line up in 12 personnel. They play the highest rate of 12 personnel, which is double tight ends, and they just kind of go run heavy. Now the Jets' offensive play distribution is 62% pass, 38% run. This obviously sounds like they're a pass-heavy team, but they actually have the lowest pass rate over expectation. When you think about the game states they're involved in, constantly trailing and needing to play catch-up, in theory, all they should be doing is passing, but they don't. They constantly try to establish the run, regardless of the scoreboard. Browns defense, as we know, it's either number 1 or 2 against the run. I have them number 2 against the run after the Patriots game. The thought of making the Jets offense completely one-dimensional, taking away the run, they could get shut out. I don't even know who's at QB for the Jets, to be completely honest. I don't even think it really matters. But as bad as Dylan Gabriel has been, we're at the halfway point of the season, and I think Cleveland has had like a really good draft. Judkins is the real deal. The kid from Michigan there, the defensive tackle, what's his name? Mason Graham. Then the tight end, Harold Fannin. He actually might not play. I think he's banged up. Meant to check his injury status. But the Browns really just bombed on the most important position, the quarterback, which first signs of that was when their 42-year-old Flacco beat all the rookies out in camp. But Dylan Gabriel is not an NFL starter. He's the opposite of having like a live arm. He hasn't even shown like flashes of being an NFL starter. But all right. I'm going to skip over the Saints and Panthers game because it's an ugly, well, not because it's an ugly game, but because I have a bet on this game that I really like. Members of the Discord already know what that bet is, but I actually have a lot of talking points on this game. So I think I'm going to do like a separate standalone video on this matchup. But I will talk about the next game here. Bills, Dolphins. If 4 Ds is a quadruple D, what is 5 Ds? Is that quintuple? I think it's a quintuple D. Double-digit divisional dog Dolphins. I'm on it. I bet Dolphins plus 10 at like minus 115. We add in the home element here too. Double-digit divisional home dog. There's only been 7 of those post-COVID. They're 5-2. They're only 28-27 the last 22 seasons. So it's not like these double-digit divisional home dogs crush or anything. But I do think the Dolphins can keep it close. This is a rematch, and the Miami offense had something going the first meeting. And matchup-wise, it makes sense. Tua is at his best against zone coverage, and that's what Buffalo primarily plays. Tua is like a 2-step drop, single read and throw QB. That neutralizes the Bills' pass rush. Buffalo's weakness is defending the run. They're bottom 3 in a lot of metrics, but they're especially weak up the middle. Not saying Miami has like a physical run game. Nobody would call them bullies, but they do have like kind of a creative inside zone run concept. So, and not that injuries seem to matter or anything for Buffalo, but their entire defense is on the injury report. I don't even know who's playing or who's not, but everyone's banged up. Now, of course, there's a reason why Miami is a double-digit home dog here. It's because they have no chance at stopping Buffalo on offense, especially without Chop Robinson on the defensive line, who's likely to miss. Buffalo very likely could and probably will run the ball down Miami's throat and have the ball for 40 minutes. But who knows? Maybe Buffalo has a little letdown after their annual regular season Super Bowl win over KC. Maybe McDermott gives some guys who are banged up the week off to get healthy for the more important games down the stretch. Plus, let's be real. After the Raiders cash with the quad D, double-digit divisional dogs, how can I not go for the 2-0 this week? So give me the quadruple D here of the home variety. Kind of looking to turn back the clock here to my younger days when I first started betting these quad Ds. They'd go 8-3 every year, and I'm not exaggerating either. Plus, just double-digit home dogs since 2010, not the divisional variety, but just double-digit home dogs, 63, 45, 58% against the spread since 2010. The Power Packet has all these records for situational spots by year under the historical tab. For those of you who don't know what the Power Packet is, it's a Google Doc that I update regularly for members. They can download it. It has my power ratings for each game, a bunch of other stuff like teams who fit the optimized teaser strategy each week, some advanced metrics, and more. Invite link to join the Discord is in all my social media bios. Okay, we're moving right along here. Jags, Texans. Jags off an overtime game. We all know this is a negative spot, even though the Raiders just covered this week after an overtime game. But teams who played an overtime game the previous week are just 43% against the spread. Line history on this game is pretty interesting. This look-ahead line had Houston -3. Then, of course, Stroud goes down. The line reopens Sunday night, Houston -1. My numbers on this game make Houston -3.6 points on a neutral. So I'm around Houston -5, factoring in home field advantage. That's with Stroud at quarterback. Now, the question is, how much of a downgrade is Davis Mills from Stroud? It's not like Stroud's having a Pro Bowl caliber season or anything. We know Davis Mills is not good. We've seen enough of him to know he's a legit career backup. But let's say he's a field goal downgrade, like a full 3 points. I'm still only Houston -2. If Jags got back to -1.5, I'm going to tease the Texans for sure. I mean, I show a pretty significant edge here on Houston as it is with them being favorites and getting points here. But I have a feeling this closes a pick 'em and we won't see Jags get to +1.5, at least not across the board where I can tease it. And I hate going back to the scene of the crime of a team I just bet and lost with, but I have to believe my Houston bet last week was a good bet, just bad result. Got unlucky with the Stroud injury. Jags offense stands zero chance versus this unanimous #1 overall defense. This Houston defense is legit. And the Jags without Travis Hunter, I think he's not going to play. They pick up Jacoby Myers at the deadline. He's going to be a non-factor, and doubt he'll do anything in his first game in a complicated Liam Cohen offense that some players who've been in all season still haven't figured out. I don't see how Jags has any success moving the ball downfield against a defense that forces you to kind of put together methodical drives and doesn't allow fluke explosive plays. Obviously, the big concern is can Houston score? The Jags defense isn't great. Their numbers are still being aided by crazy turnover variance in the first 6 weeks of the season. Jags will get back Devin Lloyd, but I think Davis Mills can kind of manage the game and do just enough, and the Texans defense will do the heavy lifting. When I think about this Jags team, I really struggle to think what does this Jags team do well? Honest question, I guess if I had to answer it, it'd be their kicker there, Cam Little. He has a boot on him, but that's about it. All right, let's move along to the Ravens-Vikings game. Ravens all of a sudden completely healthy. Went from the most injured team in the league to healthiest. Baltimore adds Draymond Jones, defensive end, versatile, can pressure, but sturdy versus the run. Ravens defense looks much different now that they're healthy, and it's shown the past couple weeks. I think their defense is still pretty underrated for the games played when they weren't fully healthy. They have Kyle Hamilton playing up in the box now. That's made a big difference, especially versus the run, because Hamilton's so good versus the run on the outside, on the tackles there. in open space. He's like a sure tackler. So this allows the help defenders to kind of stay home up the middle and take away the inside run, which Baltimore's been really bad with, dead last in EPA allowed on inside run plays. So it'll be interesting to see if Minnesota will try to attack up the middle, and if Baltimore's improved middle of the run defenses can stop it. Now, on the other side of the ball, Vikings defense really caught Jared Goff by surprise last week with all the pressure in the A-gaps, right up the middle in his face. They won't be able to do that versus Lamar. It's actually what Lamar wants, so he can kind of get outside. Everything that made the Vikings defense look good last week, Lamar has answers for it. The Vikings rely on man coverage outside, which works against Goff, who's a statue in the pocket, but not against Lamar, who can get outside and make plays versus a defense that'll have their back to him in man coverage, chasing receivers downfield. And Vikings are really going to have to try and calculate their blitzes. If it doesn't get home and Lamar is able to get to the second level, it's just less defenders up there for him to deal with. This total kind of like smells to me. It opened 46.5. It gets bet up to 49. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see under money come over the weekend. It just seems like the over is not like a true position sharps would be on, mainly because it just makes too much sense. Both offenses have looked good, and, just kind of like what's obvious is usually what, the sharp bettors are opposite of, I don't know. I could be wrong. That's just kind of like my feel on that one. Still don't really know what to make of J.J. McCarthy. I don't know how much to upgrade the Vikings rating from the Wentz version to now. So I can't really make a confident number here. All right, next one up. Let's go Patriots Bucks here. Hometown ball club, according to the expert analysis on TV and on social media, Drake May is coming off his worst game of the season, which 24 points on the board. If that's his worst, I'm okay with that as a Patriots fan. Obviously, the weak strength of schedule is a major talking point here. Ever since the Patriots went into Orchard Park and beat Josh Allen and the Bills back in Week 5, I've been saying that this Week 10 game here on the road in Tampa Bay will be the real test, not just to see who and what the Patriots are, but for Drake May. Todd Bowles' whole career legacy is based on how good he is versus young QB for the first time he sees them. You can go back and look at the numbers. Every time he's seen a first or second year QB for the first time, they've struggled. And it's because he overwhelms them, not just with pressure, but like mentally, with disguised coverages, moving defenders around pre and post snap. The interesting matchup here that I'm excited to watch for is Tampa Bay's blitzes versus this Patriots offense. Tampa Bay blitzes at the top 5 rate. Patriots offense happens to be second in EPA gained when blitzed. And, back to Bowles here versus the young QBs. Have to think this is going to be magnified more here in this spot with the Bucs coming off a bye week, extra time to prepare. But also looking at this Bucs injury report, surprisingly, it doesn't look like they're getting a ton of guys back off the bye. I thought we'd see Godwin or Bucky Irving back, but I guess the most important thing is over the bye was for Baker, who was able to kind of get healthy from that oblique injury, which was definitely bothering him. I mean, you could see it the last 2 weeks. He had 0 rush attempts in the last 2 games since the injury, so he was definitely feeling that. But I already knew I wasn't going to have a play on this game because it's 2 teams I have no confidence in my power rating for. Some of you Discord members might remember this, or the ones that have access to my power ratings. But remember back in week 1 and 2 of the season, I was showing huge edges on the Bucs. I still don't even know why, but my numbers had the Bucs rated as like the 6th or 7th best team in the league, like week 1. Their ratings in week 1 were 2.6 points above league average. That's about what their rating is now. And I'm not saying it's like a bad thing. My numbers accurately predicted what the Bucs team would be, but my point is the Bucs do something to my numbers that messes with me. And the Patriots, I always have a hard time with the hometown team. I can never tell if I'm like being biased with them or not, or even if I'm purposely not trying to be biased, I could be subconsciously. So I try to stay away from that. But one thing's for sure, both these defenses are very strong against the run. So I imagine the game script for both offenses will be a little bit more pass heavy, which for the Patriots, that doesn't really change things. They're already fifth or sixth in pass rate over expectation. So, but it looks like Drake May is going to be without one of his new favorite targets, Kayshon Boutte. He's going to miss. Running back Ramondre Stevenson also likely to miss here. Okay, we'll move right along here to the Giants Bears. A lot to discuss in this game, but I'm going to start with the injury report because later today or late Friday afternoon, final injury report is especially important in this one, starting with the G-men, particularly in their secondary. Safety Javon Holland, cornerback Drew Phillips, cornerback Paulson Adebo. They'll look like they're going to miss, or at least Adebo might. For the Bears, the big ones are all on defense. Also in the secondary, Josh Blackwell, Kevin Byard, linebacker TJ Edwards, Dominic Robinson. So these injuries, very impactful and could impact the spread if we see a bad final report for one of these teams. Now, this is expected to be a bad weather game. The total was up around 48 on Tuesday and has been adjusted down due to the weather. Looks like a rain-snow mix with some wind. So what does a bad weather game look like between these two teams? We know the weather impacts both passing and kicking, and it benefits the run game. If this weather report holds up, massive advantage for the Bears here. The Giants' offense has relied a lot on explosive downfield passing. Giants' offense is top 5 in deep pass rate. The Bears' defense is bottom 3 in defending the deep ball, but in bad weather can Dart kind of handle the weather. This limits, I think, one of the Giants' biggest edges. Now, the Giants' defense is league worst in several metrics when it comes to defending the run. They allow 2 full yards before first contact. That's just one of the things they're dead last in. The Bears, extremely well suited for a bad weather game. They have physical blocking up front. Bears are top 10 in both inside and outside rush EPA, but are really good with the outside zone run game. Giants defense, dead last in rush EPA allowed on outside zone run. So have to think the weather report, if this holds up, Bears have a big advantage, but if this weather report switches and is only like a 8 or 10 mile per hour wind, this total is way too low for these two defenses here. All right, let's move on to the 4 o'clock game here. We got Cardinals, Seahawks. All right, I have 2 future bets involving this Cardinals team. They're not aging very well, and if I'm going to boast about my future bets, the ones that do well, I have to talk about the ones that completely miss. Jonathan Gannon to win Coach of the Year. One thing I always watch is like these post-game pressers on the team's official YouTube channels. I make like a playlist, and I try to watch them all on like Monday or Tuesday. After the Cardinals game on Monday Night Football, Jonathan Gannon said Kyle Murray is still the starter, and he won't lose his job due to injury. Less than 24 hours later, Brissett's named the starter. It was just the most obvious lie, especially because we just saw them completely go all in with the Brissett playbook. All formations and the plays versus Dallas were the ones that better suited Brissett. Jonathan Gannon to win Coach of the Year it's closer for him to be fired this year than Coach of the Year. The second bet I made was the Cardinals to win the Super Bowl. I know that sounds crazy. It was more of like a numbers grab at plus 6,600 odds. Obviously, it has no chance, but the Cardinals are 3-5. All 5 losses are by a combined 13 points. They could very easily be undefeated. And they would be if you flipped every single score outcome. And not even single score outcomes. We're talking about a 1-point loss, a 2-point loss, a 1-point loss, and then 2 4-point losses. One play in each of those games is difference, but regardless, the 2 future bets I'm going to mark as losses early on my official sheet. Cardinals defense looked good versus Dallas, but Dallas is like the definition of an unserious team. Seattle as a team might be the definition of a serious team, and Arizona was a team that looked like they were getting healthy, and then versus Dallas they lose Will Johnson. That's huge. Mac Wilson and then Max Melton. Matchup-wise, this looks bad for Arizona on defense. They like to play like light boxes with safeties deep, protecting over the top. But Seattle likes to go heavy personnel. And when those safeties start creeping up, it's when they go play action up top. And now Seattle adds Rashid Shaheed, which adds another deep threat element. I really like this move, picking up Shaheed too. He should be like quick to make a transition, because remember, Shaheed was in the same offense last year with Clint Kubiak. So, against this Cardinals defense that already likes to play back with their safeties deep, if they go back any further, Seattle's going to have a field day over the middle. And what's becoming obvious is that Seattle's run game is just like a decoy to set up for the passing game. Seattle doesn't even seem to care they have no run game. They rank 31st in EPA per rush, 31st in yards per carry, but it doesn't matter because they're first in yards per pass attempt, number 1 EPA per dropback. The run game is nothing more than a setup to create mismatches in the passing game outside. It's pretty interesting what Seattle's doing here offensively. But, the stock does seem really high on Seattle right now. Seattle off a primetime Sunday night game with the Rams on deck. That's going to be a game that decides first place in the division. This could be one of those like lack of focus games, playing a team they already beat. And actually, I have a good system here that matches on Arizona, and I think I'm going to use that system in the Super System Sunday video because I don't have a system set up yet for that one. But that's a good one. All right, moving right along, Lions, Commies. We have some huge overreactions here, plural overreactions. Commanders looking terrible on primetime is the first one. Obviously, the Jaden Daniels injury. Monday and Tuesday, this line was 9.5. Is Mariota a downgrade to Daniels? Yeah, of course he is, but it's not as much like this season. When you compare the numbers, we aren't comparing Mariota to Daniels' potential or his ceiling or what he did last season. We're replacing Daniels' production this season with Mariota and then adjusting for that. That difference is nowhere near what the mark had it earlier this week. And that's why the line's been correcting itself all week. Was 9.5, now flat 8s are popping up. And to be honest, I'm kind of happy the line has moved because it gives me an excuse to pass. I don't want to bet against Detroit off a loss with playoff revenge. Remember, Washington knocked the Lions out of the playoffs last year, but if this line was 9 or 9.5, I might be priced in on Washington. We see these big overreactions all the time. Starter goes down, but so much depends on who the backup is. It's not like Washington has to completely throw out their playbook and use a new one for Mariota. Sure, Mariota isn't a dynamic run threat. You basically white out the designed run games, limit 90% of the RPO part of the playbook, and you have a very similar quarterback. And it's not like he's entering the week getting first-team reps at practice for the first time ever. He's been doing this like all season. I've mentioned a few times this year, and even before the season started, about Washington having the oldest roster in the league. It's a cool talking point, I guess. I didn't think it would really matter. I mean, an old NFL roster is 28, 29. But, man, it has really shown here for the Commies. Not just with injuries, but speed. Like Deebo Samuel, Bobby Wagner, both showing their age. They've been bad. And not they've been bad, but like the Commies have been bad in those short week spots or those travel spots that older teams typically struggle in. I think I just saw Marshall Lattimore's now in the IR. Who else? Frankie Luvo, linebacker. I think his suspension was dropped to a fine, or maybe I'm confusing it with like the suspension being for his hip drop. I can't remember, but I like him. Linebacker number 4. That was my Massachusetts State All-Star game number 4. And that was way before linebackers could wear single digits too. But Commanders defensive coordinator Joe Witt, he's going to come down from the booth up top to start calling plays on the sideline. Probably doesn't make a difference because the problem is the personnel and the injuries piling up. I'm looking at the injury report now. Lions are the complete opposite. They're getting healthier. Their O-line's back pretty much. Becker, Penny Sewell, I could see this Lions offense run it up. There's a bet on Prop Builder I was looking at last night. Any team to score 40 points, and it's like 4-1 odds. I think I'm going to bet this. When the Lions offense is clicking, like when Goff is comfortable and in the zone, which usually starts with the run game, this Lions offense will pour it on. But when things like start bad, like maybe Goff throws an early INT or a sack fumble, very rare to see the offense turn it around. My numbers get nowhere close to 8, though. I'm only here at like Detroit -6. All right, what do we got next? The last late game. We'll go to the West Coast for this one. NFC West divisional matchup. Rams-Niners. Super difficult game to handicap here. On paper, the Rams should dominate, but that's not how these matchups go. Rams enter the game with revenge on their minds. Rams lost at home as 8-point favorites a month ago to the Niners. The underdogs dominate this matchup. 8 of the last 10 head-to-head meetings between these two teams has seen the dog cover. And the 2 times the dogs did cover, the line was basically a pick 'em or one. One of the first things that jump out to me in this matchup is the huge mismatch of Rams O-line versus Niners D-line. This is about as big of a difference in ability or talent, whatever you want to call it, with the Rams O-line being one of the best and the Niners having one of the worst defensive fronts. Definitely when it comes to generating pressure, it's basically non-existent. Niners ranked dead last in pressure, and it's all injury related. You can't just lose your best guys at both levels, Bosa and Fred Warner, and it not be noticeable. But regardless, for some teams, the Niners being one of them, injuries just seem to matter less. But it's so tough to quantify that because when you break down the games before they start, it looks like San Fran should have a bunch of disadvantages in several areas, and then you look up and see they're a 6-3 team. And it's not like they played a super easy strength schedule. It's about league average. And the Rams, man, they're just such like a wagon of a team, and they should win. That's obvious, but what's obvious doesn't get you paid in the NFL. Do we all remember the reason why San Fran was 8.5-point dogs in the first meeting? San Fran was riddled with injuries. That hasn't changed, but they do have Kittle back, which they didn't have in the first meeting. So who's to say Shanahan doesn't get in his bag again and draw up a gem of a game plan? And what's up with Ricky Pearsall, man? The dude's still not practicing. I thought he was initially with like knee stiffness or something. Did he like tear his ACL and I didn't read about it? He's been out for like 5 weeks now. All right, let's move to the primetime game, Sunday Night Football. I had these two teams rated very similarly. I have the Chargers 1 point better than league average. I have the Steelers 0.6 points above league average. So if these two teams played on a neutral field, I'd make the Chargers a little less than a half-point favorites. Now, the tricky part is Chargers home field advantage. They basically don't have one. They're one of the few teams who have a better record on the road than at home. Chargers at home have had to use like silent snap counts in the past. That's how little of a home field advantage they have. But, I was thinking East Coast team making the long trip out west, we should give them a bump up in home field advantage. But no, for some reason, East Coast teams have dominated the Chargers in SoFi Stadium. The last 15 times an East Coast team traveled out to SoFi to take on the Chargers are just 5-10 straight up defending their home field versus East Coast time zone teams. But it's a primetime standalone game, so I'll give the Chargers 1.5 for home field advantage, which is about the lowest. That still only gets me to Chargers -2. Pitt plus a field goal, I'd have a decision to make. It's a team I don't like, though. I mean, the Colts had 6 turnovers last week, and the Steelers still needed an onside kick late to win. Maybe Pitt in a teaser plus 2.5 up to 8.5, especially because I think this is going to lower scoring game. The Steelers caught the Colts offense off guard a little bit last week. I mean, Colts still moved the ball minus the turnovers, but Steelers switched to something they haven't done all year. They basically moved Jalen Ramsey to safety and went to like this too high safety look. And I don't think it will be something that's going to work out long term once teams like adjust for it. But I think now, maybe in this game here, it could force Herbert to kind of hold on to the ball a little bit longer, and the Steelers pass rush could get home. Um, and, I've been saying how I think, like, overall injuries have had less of an impact this season. For whatever reason, we've seen teams deal with what should have been, like, impactful negative injuries and it not really show up on the field. But the Joe Alt season ender for the Chargers is enormous. And I'm not just saying, like, it's enormous like some empty commentary. When I say the loss of Joe Alt is huge, I mean, this Chargers O-line goes from like a top 10 or top 8 pass pro to a bottom 5 with him on the field to with him out. That's how big he is. And just look at last week's game against the Titans. As soon as Joe Alt left the game, Titans lived in the backfield. They started getting pressure on every pass play. And, also when Alt was previously hurt, they had this guy I never heard of. I think it's Bobby Hart or Robert Hart filling in at tackle. He was looking good. Now he's hurt too. I think the Steelers' defensive front finally earns a paycheck this week. And as I've talked about, as I talk about this game, I'm really starting to like this under. DraftKings right now, they have an off-market 45.5. I've been staring at that. I haven't liked the Steelers offense all year either, so it's such an easy style to like game plan for because they just rely on yards after the catch so much. And Chargers are actually like a perfect matchup because they keep everything in front of them. They're sure tacklers on first contact. Rodgers has been terrible against pressure. Well, I shouldn't say. Yeah, he's been terrible against pressure that's created without a blitz. And the Chargers do just that. They generate pressure without having to blitz. But Rodgers is good when you send extra guys because he can kind of, find the open spots. But, I think I like the under a lot in that one, especially at that 45.5 for at DK. I'm going to bet that. All right, Monday Night Football game here. Eagles, Packers. Eagles off a bye week. Came at a good time because they had a bunch of guys banged up. Both teams are banged up in this one, actually. I know I feel like I should have like this in-depth game breakdown on primetime Monday Night Football, but it's just another game. Like, I mean, it makes no difference to me if the game's primetime or not. And this feels like more like a game to sit out and watch to see where these two teams are and learn about them. Green Bay's had 2 head-scratching losses against Cleveland and then last week versus Carolina where they looked like they entered both those games with zero preparation or game plan. Now, of course, I have to think we see like a focused A-game type effort from Green Bay here after the loss to Carolina, which if you watch my game preview breakdown last week on that game, I said Green Bay might be looking ahead to this game here versus Philly. Philly adds edge guy Jalen Phillips from Miami. This should help in an area that was lacking on the Eagles' edge. Think Phillips will make an impact and have a good rest of the year. Something I always wonder that I was thinking about when I saw this this trade. From both sides of the trade, like, does the GM think about going to get a player from Miami in November? And does like the player like Jalen Phillips, is he like, oh shit, I got to go up to Philly in the cold? And like that's an angle I actually always look for in college football during bowl seasons is playing against those Florida schools when they're in some like, I don't know, toilet bowl, up in Pontiac, Michigan or in Boston. Those Florida kids want nothing to do with that friggin' 10 below weather. What else? Packers, Tucker Kraft there, ACL. I think that injury is going to, it may not be felt as much immediately, but I think we're going to look back in like 4 or 5 weeks from now and pinpoint the offense like starting a decline. He's so big, like, on the underneath stuff. Matthew Golden also, too. He's hurt. Not sure what his status is. But, I'm going to stop here. Almost 40 minutes or so. A little close to. If you watch to the end, I appreciate it. If you could give this video a like, thumbs up, a comment, maybe even share it, I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, good luck with your bets.